Hey, what's going on, everybody? Chris Meaney here of FTN, and here are 5 things we learned from week 3 of the NFL season. Number 5, Damien Harris will not be used in the passing game whatsoever. Now, you may have already known this. Certainly, I had an idea as well. He's somebody who has 5 targets here on the season. He had 2 targets in week 3, and he may fall into 1 or 2 targets here and there, but he only had 7 in 10 games last season. But even with James White sidelined when he left with a hip injury and it looks like he's going to miss some time, Damien Harris was still not a part of the offense when they were down in the game. And now, certainly that was game script dependent, but how many times are we going to be able to say, yeah, the New England Patriots are probably going to roll over this team. They're going to be up in this game and they're going to run the football. Their defense has improved from last season, but the Saints were able to score some points on them, and Mac Jones is not really pushing the ball down the field, and the offense is not rolling. Teams are going to stack the box when it comes to this New England Patriots offense. So for Damien Harris, I'm discouraged. I didn't like what I saw last week when they were down in the game. They started with 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then it was really kind of game over for New England because Mac Jones, like I said, wasn't able to push the ball down the field, and it was a lot of Brennan Bolden and J.J. Taylor. More so Brennan Bolden, but with the game close, semi-close, with New England inside the red zone in the fourth quarter, certainly time to punch it in, get the stop, and then also drive down the field and maybe tie the game. They went with Brennan Bolden on 2nd and 3rd down inside the red zone, and he got stuffed twice for -1 yard. I'm a little discouraged with Damien Harris. I thought maybe, sure, if you're not going to use him to get down the field and you're going to be passing the ball, maybe you have Bolden in there. He wasn't getting a ton of targets. J.J. Taylor's not getting a ton of targets. I would like to see Damien Harris in there, especially inside the red zone to punch it in. He is their best back. It seemed like he was in the doghouse and they just abandoned the run. So what's going to happen this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They're probably going to be playing from behind. And if Damien Harris can't get anything going on the ground against the league's best rush defense in each of the last 2 seasons, we may not see him on the field too much again this week. Number 4, Tyson Williams cannot be trusted. Listen, the Baltimore Ravens told us this. They said they were going to use all of their running backs, but even in a primetime matchup, I thought he could be an RB2 against the Detroit Lions, a team that has given up so many rushing yards over the past couple seasons, a team that allowed the most rushing touchdowns in 2020. A really good spot for what the Ravens do really well is run the football, to run all over Detroit, and that just wasn't the case. The Lions did a pretty good job. You have to give them credit. They contained Lamar Jackson for the most part. Maybe if Marquise Brown hauls in a couple of those catches, it's a different game script and they lean on the run game a little bit more. But Tyson Williams can't be trusted. The Ravens said they would use all their running backs, and that's exactly what they're doing. Latavius Murray acted like the primary back. He led the team in carries. He didn't do a whole lot with them. And Williams led the team in snaps, but only 50.9% of the snaps. Devontae Freeman still getting in there and really not touching the ball a lot, but just getting in there and playing a few snaps here and there. So my big takeaway is that we can't trust Tyson Williams. Last week, he was a sell-high candidate because of this matchup and because Latavius Murray was getting in there as well. He had a red zone rushing attempt in week 1, which he converted for a touchdown, and the same thing happened in week 2. Tyson Williams, a couple fumbles in week 1 and in week 2. He got lucky. One went out of bounds, and then one was recovered by his own team. But Latavius Murray is going to be a factor. It seems like the Ravens trust him to close out games. And when the game is tight and the opposing team is generating some pressure, they trust him to pick up that pass blocking assignment, which Tyson has struggled with so far. Now, Williams looks like the best back. And last week I mentioned selling high. Now the stock, it's dropped. His window is open if you want a piece. It's not for me, but I also wouldn't drop him. I'd hang on to him. You never know what's going to happen. He could overtake the backfield. Lack could get hurt. Freeman could go away. Those things could happen. But as of right now, in a matchup in Denver against the Broncos, I don't think Tyson Williams can touch your starting roster. Number 3, the Los Angeles Chargers are legit and the Pittsburgh Steelers stink. I think we can agree we saw both things coming. More on the Steelers in a little bit. The Chargers were my best bet on the Sunday morning betting show with Elliot Chris and Matthew Friedman. Catch that every Sunday morning at 10 Eastern. But also, I'm a kind of a coward because I didn't pick them on the money line. I picked them against the spread +7 division game. Herbert's now 2-1 against KC. He's covered in all 3 games. And plus, Vegas kind of overrates the Chiefs a little bit. They do. They're 1-12-1 in their last 14 covering the spread. Since November 1st, they've covered 1 spread. Crazy. But the Chargers are legit. And now, I hear you. KC turned the ball over. They were sloppy. They've been sloppy lately. But don't take anything away from what the Chargers did. Yeah, KC turned the ball over. But the Chargers, I mean, they pushed the ball up the field. They played good defense. They created some of those turnovers. They got players on defense. Derwin James is one of my favorite players in the game. Joey Bosa is fantastic. I mean, the stones of Brendan Staley to get it done here. With a couple minutes left in the game, going for it may have been a little bit of a bonehead move, but they were still able to find a way to get the victory. But I think there's two sides of it. Yeah, he escaped. We may be talking about him on Monday morning as just another coach who mismanaged the game and gave the ball back to Patrick Mahomes to come back down the field and score some points. But he went for it. He didn't have trust in his kicker. That's part of Chargers history on why I needed to see them win this type of game. Because yes, they missed a field goal, I believe, and they missed an extra point. I think a couple. They definitely missed 2 kicks. Certainly the extra point at the end, but also maybe Staley not having confidence in his kicker and seeing Mike Williams one-on-one. That's a matchup that we can win. It's almost like the old Dez Bryant. When it's one-on-one, Tony Romo, what did he do? He threw him the fade, he threw it up to him, and Dez came down with the ball. I think Dez had 16 touchdowns one season. Mike Williams has a touchdown in each game, and he may just get a touchdown every single game, considering the way that this Chargers offense looks right now. The draft of Rashawn Slater, when you heard Austin Eckler talk on the fantasy podcast with Liz Loza about the game script and how he was just going to protect and see if Slater can hold his own, and he held his own. We saw 0 targets from Austin Eckler in week 1. We saw 9 all 9 he reeled in week 2, and he caught 6 more passes in week 3. I like the way that this offense is looking right now. It's an offensive line that looks solid. They addressed it in the offseason to protect their young quarterback, and Herbert is throwing the ball down the field to Mike Williams. Breakout season is here. Keenan Allen, we like. Eckler is getting used properly, not just catching balls out of the backfield, getting double-digit carries, but used inside the red zone. He's had more red zone rushing attempts inside the 5 than he did in all of 2020. I like the look of this Chargers team. I'm buying in. Again, I needed to see it. I needed to see them win this type of game because I've had a soft spot for years with the Chargers. They've had great rosters. Go back to Phillip Rivers when he was elite, Antonio Gates, those two. And those 12 and 13 win seasons that they had only to lose in the playoffs. And over the past couple years, being hyped, getting respect from Vegas, star players on both sides of the field, you need to see it first. And they've still had some moments where they can't find a way to get inside the red zone. And there's some random offensive penalties that guys in motion that shouldn't be in offensive starts. It's a new, young coaching staff. There's a lot of elements here. But this was a big step forward for the Chargers, and I saw a new team. I saw a team that certainly can play on defense. They're healthy and they're playing with a lot of confidence. And it's led by Brendan Staley, who has looked really bold over the past couple of games. And I like what I've seen from them. So they won that game. I needed to see them get over the hump. There's still some issues with their kickers, clearly, but they do look legit. And it looks like the best division in football, with no disrespect to the NFC West, which may be the best division in football. Also, the Steelers. Kind of thought that they stunk last year when they played the Browns. It was like a coming out party for Cleveland. They sacked Big Ben. They forced 5 interceptions. They kicked their butts in Pittsburgh, and they moved on to the Chiefs. And they held their own against the Chiefs. But this is about the Steelers, and this is about a Pittsburgh team not looking good. 2 weeks ago, Big Ben called out offensive coordinator Matt Canada. Just called him out. Said, hey, it's not me. It's the play calling. He's done this before. And then, down 2 scores with the game on the line, basically, you have to find the end zone here or it's over. It's 4th and 10. What did we see? We saw a swing pass to Najee Harris. Yeah, he had 19 targets, and that's great for fantasy. I don't think he's going to get another game where he has 19 targets, but double-digit targets probably in his future, week in and week out. No question. Especially if Deontay Johnson's not going to play. He was out of that game, and then Juju Smith-Schuster left. So maybe we can give Ben a little bit of a pass, but the offensive line is not great, and Ben's not mobile. And he can't push the ball down the field. He couldn't last year, and he's not pushing it down this year either. He's missing Chase Claypool. He's underthrowing Claypool, who also was dinged up late in that game. There's not a lot to like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have a lot of concerns. I'm fine with Najee. Claypool's going to have his up and down games. He's going to have probably more bust games than boom. If Juju misses time and Deontay can't get on the field, you roll out Claypool as a guy who will get double-digit targets. But Big Ben in this offense, I have a lot of questions about them, and they don't look good right now. Number 2, the term load management is not just an NBA term. It is indeed now incorporated into Julio Jones' status. According to head coach Mike Vrabel, he said after the game when he was asked why Julio Jones didn't really get a lot of usage, especially in the second half, he said he's just managing his workload. He's 32 years old. Julio Jones came into this season not 100%. He missed most of camp, didn't really get a lot of time with Ryan Tannehill. But I was watching that game and I was wondering, where the heck is Julio Jones? What is happening? Is this not just an Atlanta Falcons thing? There was a play late in the third quarter. There was a PI and the Titans got the ball inside the red zone and Julio Jones was on the sidelines. And the announcers are asking, where's Julio Jones? You would think Julio Jones would be in here because AJ Brown is gone. He was ruled out of the game early. He only played a handful of snaps, I believe 8. And he was done. He had a hamstring injury. So I'm wondering myself, in a one-score game against your division rivals in the Indianapolis Colts, why isn't Julio Jones out there? This is the same question that the announcers had in that game. And then he didn't touch the field at all in the fourth quarter. And there were red zone plays where he didn't touch the field in a one-score game after that play at the end of the third. And I know what you're thinking. Well, they don't need to pass. They have Derrick Henry. Well, they didn't get in the first couple times with Henry. And then they were in a passing down situation. And Ryan Tannehill threw the ball to Jeremy McNichols, not Julio Jones. I found it strange that he didn't touch the field at all in the fourth quarter when he was, quote-unquote, 100%. I don't know. Maybe he's not. He's been on the sidelines multiple times over the past couple years. He always seems to be questionable, but I thought it was strange that he couldn't get in there in the one-score game in, red zone packages. So Mike Vrabel calls out Julio in week 1, then talks him up in week 2, says he's a great pass blocker, and then really just benches him in week 3. I don't know if he did anything to Vrabel, but I don't know if we can trust Julio Jones in our lineups. I don't know if we can buy low. I'm going to ride the course. I'm going to stay the course and ride this thing out. They got the Jets this week. AJ Brown is going to miss some time. That's all assuming that Julio Jones is going to be able to play in this game. But I'm going to continue to ride him out because the schedule is nice moving forward. I believe they have Jacksonville after this week. But I have some concerns about Julio. And another thing that I learned this week is the pronunciation of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. That's right. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I learned a lot about this dude over the last 24 hours or so. First of all, he was stealing all Julio Jones' targets inside the red zone. One he converted for a touchdown. He caught 4 passes for 53 yards. He was part of that big PI play, which set up the Titans inside the red zone, which eventually they converted for a touchdown with Julio Jones on the sidelines. But listen, if AJ Brown's going to miss some time and Julio Jones is going to be limited, and he's already nicked up with an injury, according to Mike Vrabel, they want to ease him in to, the middle part of the season and hopefully into the playoffs, speaking from the Titans standpoint, that maybe Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is going to be involved in this offense. I know everything runs through Derrick Henry, but I just talked about the matchups coming up. They're pretty good against the Jets and against the Jags. So if Julio is going to be second on the team in snaps and second on the team in routes run, then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine may be first on the team in snaps and routes run. He's a big body for Ryan Tannehill. He's 6'3". He did fumble. It was a bad fumble. But Josh Reynolds is hurt, and Chester Rogers is not really a guy that's going to get a bulk of the snaps or the opportunities, even if Julio does miss some time. So I think what we really learned here is that Vrabel hates Julio Jones, and I love to say the name Julio Jones, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine could be more than just a DFS play. I think I'm going to add him in a couple of my deep leagues. The number one thing I learned, and you may just call me a straight fool, is that Matt Nagy is indeed incapable of playing to Justin Fields' strengths. I thought he could. I really did. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought that he could have a game plan surrounded around Justin Fields' strengths because I don't want to compare him to Mitch Trubisky, but Trubisky's, he can run. He can move. He's mobile. I mean, you could have a game plan similar to the ones that you had with Mitch Trubisky. Dude has had months to prepare for a Justin Fields game plan. He couldn't have been that naive to think that Andy Dalton was just going to start every game of the season this year for the Chicago Bears. I get it. He made promises to Andy Dalton that he would be the guy. But Dalton's hurt. You had more than enough time to have a game plan for Justin Fields. And he didn't. He had a game plan for Andy Dalton or Nick Foles. He had a ludicrous game plan. He put Justin Fields in there to fail. Whether he did that or not on purpose, I don't want to believe that that was the case. I don't think that he's that type of guy to put the rookie quarterback in there just to kind of pat himself on the own back and say, yeah, I knew Justin Fields wasn't ready. But listen to this. 6 for 20 for 68 yards, 1.1 yards per pass attempt. It's the second worst mark in the last century. 20 plays, 5 man, no help in 13 of those 20 plays. 2 design quarterback runs for Justin Fields, whose rushing prop came out at 40 and I think closed at like 61. Vegas, everybody was thinking that Justin Fields was going to run around here a little bit. He scrambled a couple times for his life. He was sacked 9 times. It's the 4th most sacks of all time, since they started looking at sacks since like 1963. It's the most in like 9 years. It's crazy. 2 quarterback design runs and 1 play in motion. 1. Unbelievable. So Matt Nagy, clearly there's been, if you've followed my work, and I was ticked off a couple years ago with Dave Montgomery and the usage, and there's one game he had 1 carry in the first half. So Matt Nagy has like been in my bad books for a while. I mean, ask anybody in Chicago, they've wanted this guy gone for years. He can't figure it out. He wanted Patrick Mahomes to sit for a year and then they could roll to him. Now, ultimately that worked out and Andy Reid had the final say there in KC. But Matt Nagy has, like I said, has had weeks and months since they drafted him to prepare to have a bit of a game plan for Justin Fields. Cleveland's a great defense. They are really good. But as you see here, these comments from Myles Garrett, who had 4.5 sacks, even he thought that they would run some motion and some quarterback design runs and some bootlegs, and there was none of that. So my big takeaway from the entire week 3 is that Matt Nagy is he's just not capable of playing to Justin Fields' strengths. I think he has to give up play calling. I think he could be fired at any moment. He's talking about the potential of Nick Foles starting this week and has nothing to do with the hand injury of Justin Fields. He just may go to Nick Foles and say that he doesn't think Justin Fields is ready when in hindsight, or call it that, whatever you want, in reality, it's not that Justin Fields is not ready. I'm hearing people say that he stinks. He doesn't stink. Hey, the rookie quarterbacks are not great, but he's much better than what we just saw. They put him in a bad place to succeed. But the reality is that Matt Nagy is not capable of playing to his strengths. So he either needs to, 1, give up the playbook or just step down or adapt. That's the other thing here, is that he could adapt. They got a good matchup here against the Lions. Let's see. But I have my doubts. Matt Nagy, not a good coach. And we may not have learned that. We may have learned that weeks ago, years ago. But we know now for sure, he's not a good coach. I was long-winded there. Through the entire thing. Those are 5 things that I learned, at least, this week. Drop a couple comments in the YouTube section. Tell me what you learned from week 3. And we'll look ahead on Friday on 5 things we should be looking for in week 4 of the NFL season. Thanks for taking the time to hang out. Cheers.